Huxley on a microwave approach, focusing down stalkers one by one.
Coming in from every single angle. There's a time warp, but look at this concave, this crescent moon.
This is what's going to happen now. The supply goes in Hut's favor.
He's just going to barrel through, take out whatever. So much file here coming towards.
Looking like Nesty is going to take it here.
Dancing the roaches a little bit. Scarlet.
Now the Hydras are exposed. Those Mutas are going to die, and it's nobody's going to make that much of a difference. GG.
What's up, guys? Welcome back from the MLG studios here in New York City. You're watching the WCS America Challenger League. We just finished up the round of 16 last week of the Premier League, and now we're getting into the Challenger League where our players are trying to fight to get back into Premier League. Of course, I'm axeltoss, joined by axslav. How you doing, man?
Excellently, man. Last week was a blast. All the players in the studio, some amazing games there. I think Snoot and Moonglade really showed a great show, as well as Young with some amazing TVT action.
Yeah, lots of awesome matches, and if you missed any of them, youtube.com/officialmlgscu2. But yeah, we're here right now with the Challenger League. Of course, the round of 8, the finals of WCS America Season 1 are going to be happening this weekend, so tune into that. But first, we got some Challenger League stuff to do. Now, to kind of explain the format a little bit, this is basically the second round of the bracket stage. Now, there are 2 stages in the Challenger League. One is the bracket stage. If you lose in the bracket stage, you fall down to the group stage. GSL calls it the up and downs. I think it's been referred to a number of different things. And then in the group stage, it's groups of 4, and 3 move on, and the bottom one, is out of Challenger League.
That's right. Well, actually, only the top 2 go to Premier League. The third just stays in Challenger League, and the 4th gets kicked out entirely, has to re-qualify for the next season in Challenger League.
Of course, the bracket stage, all that matters is the winner of the bracket stage. The winner of the bracket stage qualifies for the Premier League. So that being said, let's take a look at where we stand right now. We already went through round 1 of the bracket stage. I think it was a couple weeks ago. Of course, we saw all the matches from that first round, Killer Top, Phoenix Bales, etc., etc. And now we're going to find out today who's going to advance to play the losers who dropped down from the round of 16. Of course, Apocalypse, Violet, Scarlet, Sen. These are the players that came in studio and played, but unfortunately lost. So they're going to be awaiting the winners of the round from before, and the winner of that match will advance to the Premier League. Of course, those matches will be on Thursday and Wednesday. The purposes of today and tomorrow are going to be covering this round 2 of the bracket stage. Of course, here is one of the brackets: Top, Phoenix, Ian, Major, Vibe, Jim, State, and Theognis. And of course, we have the other side of the bracket as well for a total of 8 matches in this second round. It's going to be 4 matches per day. And here you see that other bracket: Ghost User, Kapach, Neeb, Puck, Illusion, Tasia, XY, DeMuslim. So many great players here. And, honestly, so much diversity in the names.
A lot of talent from all over the world. You see Tasia from Korea, XY from China, the Muslim originally from England, but he's been staying in the States for the last year or 2. And then, of course, a lot of people like Neeb, Puck, Gotuzer, Kapach, all local to the Americas. Kapach from Argentina, Gotuzer from the United States, etc., and so on.
All right, so let's start talking about what's going on today. We have 4 matches coming your way. First up, it's going to be Vibe versus Jim, followed by Ghost User Kapach, and then Phoenix versus Top. And to round out the night, we got a spectacular match coming your way between Illusion and Tasia. These matches are all live. So, guys, this is the time where you get on Reddit, you get on Twitter, get on Team Liquid, talk about these matches, pull up the Twitch chat. I know we have some handsome mods in there making sure everything's under control, but feel free to join the conversation, talk about these matches as each of these players trying to get closer, trying to get back into Premier League for some of these guys, and of course trying to get into Premier League for the first time, which is actually a really big deal. Of course, I think you automatically get $1,500 if you're in Premier League, so that alone is enough to, of course, inspire you, right, to get to that point. But we'll have to see what happens today. The first match, though, it's going to be Vibe versus Jim, and I'm particularly excited for this one because Vibe is the defending champion of the WCS USA. He won WCS USA last year, and
second place in WCS North America.
Absolutely.
So the top players from the North American region. And in fact, he's one of the top players from the entire American region. A very, very, very solid and strong player. In fact, he beat Sage in the first round of the Challenger bracket, and that was I think a lot of people call it an upset. Sage, one of the top Korean Protoss players. Vibe saying, you know what? Zerg vs Protoss, no problem. You try to cannon rush me, I'll roach rush you right back.
Man, that game was insane. Again, guys, check that out on YouTube if you missed it. Definitely one you don't want to miss. He came. Vibe started out in Premier League, and then he dropped down to Challenger League. He was in a group in the round of 32 involving the STC, Snoot, and Theognis. So he's trying to fight his way back into Premier League. I actually had a chance to chat with him on Skype a little bit earlier, and he said he really wants Premier again badly, so his fighting spirit will be out, which is great to hear, honestly. He really wants to get to that stage. Of course, he's playing a guy called Jim, and you know, your generic viewer might be like, Jim, who's this guy? Why is he playing StarCraft? Well, let me tell you something. Jim is actually a force in StarCraft 2. He's actually been at the top of the Korean ladder, the Grandmaster ladder in Korea, a number of times. So he's definitely come to play.
That's right. In fact, he had a #1 spot. I don't think he still has the #1, but he's still in the very, very top of all the Grandmasters in Korea. And one of the things about the Korean players is all the pros in Korea play on the Grandmaster ladder. It's not just like ladder warriors. The pros use ladder a lot in Korea as a practice tool. And so Jim is showing he can hang with all these top Korean pros. Vibe has already shown he can beat top Korean pros when he took out Sage in the first round. So it's going to be an amazing, amazing match coming at you guys. Are the players ready?
The players are ready. I just asked, and they said they're ready, so I'm hitting the start game button. Of course, it's important to note the winner of this match will go on to face Scarlet. So one of those situations where, sure, you know, a win is great. The road is definitely not over. But spectacular match coming your way, guys. Game 1, match 1 of the Challenger League Groups bracket stage #2. These guys fighting to get back into Premier League or to get into Premier League for the first time. It's Vibe versus Jim. The first map is going to be on Whirlwind. Of course, I noticed Vibe had he vetoed. I only saw a little bit of veto. He's vetoed Neoplanet S and Akalon Waste. Is actually pretty interesting, but we'll talk about that in a second. But here we are in the first game. And I have the pleasure of introducing our two players, spawning, I should say, in the top left-hand location. We have the blue Protoss player who's been at the #1 spot of the Korean Grandmaster ladder, trying to get into the Premier League for the first time. Hailing from China, he is Jim. Yes, he is from China. Did not make that up. Of course, Jim might be considered a common American name, people might say. I don't know if there's people named Jim in Europe. What do you think?
I think it's mostly named for the United States.
Isn't it short for something? James?
James.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. All right, bottom left-hand location, we have Vibe putting down a pool. Of course, Vibe is your Red Zerg player in the bottom left. Hailing from the United States of America. And I actually, Vibe said he was going to play a little bit cheesy. He told me that on Skype. So, not too surprised to see this 9 pool, but why don't you go ahead and explain, because we actually had a conversation about this a little bit. You know, why does it become necessary to do something like this?
So, there's a couple of reasons why, of course, Vibe wants to do this. And the main one is because Jim is an insanely great player, and you're playing on Whirlwind. And Whirlwind is a map where you play against a great Protoss to get to the late game. SkyToss is very strong on this map. It's also a map with 4 spawns very far apart. And while first you can say, okay, maybe rushing my opponent isn't as good because it takes an extra 5 to 10 seconds to cross the map and attack them, but really, a build like this, it's all about if it's scouted or not. If Jim scouts this build early, he has time to react and defeat it. But on a map this big, with the spawns this far apart, it's very hard for, or it's very unlikely for Jim to find out that Vibe is doing this build until it's too late. So Vibe trying to be very aggressive early. He's going to hide his Zerglings until speed is done, and he has a lot of Zerglings already ready. So if Jim does a standard expansion without making too many gateway units early on, all of a sudden 16 speeding show up in his base, and he's in a world of trouble. But he's already getting his first cell, so he's actually kind of playing a little bit safe, which is going to work out well against Vibe's opening.
Now, Jim historically goes for these gateway opening type plays and does not scout, of course, electing to prioritize his economy. If you're sending a probe out across the map, first of all, you know, you might scout your opponent last, so it might not even do that much for you. Second of all, obviously that's a probe that's not going to be mining for you, and that might get killed by Zerglings a little bit later. So Vibe, you know, again, he told me this before the match started. He said he was going to go for something like this, considering he knows he was able to scout his opponent as far as, you know, not in StarCraft, but as far as, you know, research his play style, and that's why he's going for this. So we'll have to see if it works out, but a very risky move. And if Jim gets the complete wall off, He's going to be fine, but that's easier said than done, and again, he has no idea this is happening.
So what we saw is Jim start to build a Zealot, then he canceled it to get resources to get that Nexus earlier. And the reason he did that is because he wanted to start the Zealot in case there was a 6-pool, very, very early rush. And Vibe's seen rush a little bit later, so he canceled the Zealot, threw down the Nexus. If the Sentry can force field the ramp and protect the main, Jim's going to be in good shape. The expansion is going to die in either case.
Oh, here come the Lings. Vibe needs to go straight for the main base. He's going to try to... The Sentry is out. The force field, it goes down. Only 2 Lings get by, but that's a good first step here for Jim. Vibe going to take down this pylon. He needs to focus on getting up that ramp, but look at this Jim completely walling off at the top of the ramp. He's going to... I don't know. What can Vibe do from here?
Well, Vibe just got to tear down this wall as fast as he can. The one thing going well for him is that Jim has very few units to actually kill these speedings. So even though he's got the wall to protect him for now, he can't kill them that fast with just a Mothership Core and a couple sentries. He's actually retreating to hold his mineral line, rolling in that section as well.
Of course, he has a Photon Overcharge available, already deploying it. 3 pylons going to go down at the top of the ramp here. Vibe has nothing speedlings in production, going in as all-in as you can get. Keep in mind, he has 11 Harvesters. Jim has 24. They're both on one base, so as long as Jim can buy enough time to get enough units out on the field and get enough sentries out, he should be in great shape, but Photon Overcharge is about to expire, so Jim is going to have phenomenal micro once that goes down.
One thing I was interested to see is, does Vibe outweight this Photon Overcharge, or did he try to kill that Psycore before Warp Gate completes? It looks like he's going to let Warp Gate complete and just wait for Photon Overcharge to expire and try to overwhelm Jim with overwhelming numbers of speedings.
He's just going to go for it. 1 sentry outside the walls. It's going to go down. Warp Gate has been finished. There are 4 gateways on the field. More sentries being warped in here for Jim, and Vibe is trying to find an opening, but I don't know if it exists.
He's going to just try to kill as many buildings as he can. Behind us, he's going to drone up, and if he can destroy enough gateways and enough tech from Jim, then he can drone up aggressively behind us, and Jim won't be able to put on a counterattack if he doesn't have the production.
Oh, Lings coming up to the north. The sentry's throwing down the force fields. Pretty decent force fields there. Only a few Lings get by. A pylon going to be made there at the main base. Behind this, Vibe has decided to go back into drone production. He has a hatchery down at his natural expansion, but a potential danger is the amount of units that are now being warped on the field by Jim. Keep in mind, Photon Overcharge still well away from being able to complete. Vibe going to try to go for the surround onto these sentry stalkers and zealots. 3 force fields going down, but Vibe doing a lot of damage here. Jim might have overextended a little bit.
He might have, but looks like Vibe's out of speeding, so Jim actually takes down most of that force, and now he's at twice the supply of Vibe. Remember, throughout all this, he had almost twice the worker count of Vibe, so even though Vibe's desperately trying to catch up in workers right now, he's still significantly behind, given that how long a period in the game he was working off of only 11 drones.
So now we have a Roach Warren on the way, and again, the supply pretty much tells the story here. 50 to 31, 29 to 24 in the Harvester count. So, you know, there's a little bit of a scary thing here for Jim because he doesn't necessarily know what Vibe is doing behind this. So if he decides to, you know, go out onto the field, not only does he risk being surrounded by a surprise attack, but Vibe can also try to counterattack with the Lings that he has on. So Jim, I feel like he's going to play very safe here, get that wall up at his natural expansion, get a Zealot there in place to make sure that he's okay against a potential counterattack, but I see no reason not to try to push across the field with the 4 gates that he has.
He may wait till he has a little bit of a wall off so he doesn't have to worry about too much about the counterattack. There goes the first Forge. He's also getting a Stargate, so he can use those Stargate units to scout.
Of course, realizing that Vibe invested a lot into his early economy, and that Vibe is probably trying to drone to catch back up, Jim is taking advantage of this by taking a tech lead here in this game. Getting that Stargate out, getting on Phoenixes on the field. So now we're going to have a situation where Vibe is going to have to build Spore Crawlers. He's going to have to build an extra Queen or 2 to be able to react to these Phoenixes properly. And of course, this is all stuff Vibe doesn't necessarily want to do. He wants to get his drones up, he wants to take that 3rd hatchery, and he doesn't want to have to worry about the Stargate play.
The problem Vibe has is even now he's still behind in worker count, trying to set up that 3rd hatchery, but he's really behind it in everything. He's behind in economy, he's behind in tech, like you mentioned with the Stargate, and he's behind in army size. I mean, Jim's army is much stronger. The only thing preventing Jim from crossing the map is the threat of that counterattack and the fact he doesn't know what Vibe has, but now he's scouting everything. He sees the 3rd hatchery, and he's going to formulate a plan to move out and try to take Vibe out.
Yeah, he should know exactly what's going on. And again, Vibe always has to worry about the threat of, you know, his opponent pushing across the field because he saw the 4 gateways. He knows his opponent has that ability to be hyper aggressive at any moment in time. So he's going to keep a watchful eye on this front door, looking at that forge, seeing Photon Overcharge, seeing his opponent's army still at his natural expansion. And Vibe, upon seeing that, he feels safe. So he's putting 7 drones up on the field. But what he doesn't necessarily know about is this Phoenix play. Jim is hiding the Phoenixes, and funnily enough, he's sending hallucinated Phoenixes out across the field. We'll have to see how many Jim saves up for, but we could have a situation where Jim just goes straight for the Queens, and then all of a sudden Vibe has no production.
And then right after that, we can see that Jim's actually going for the Roblox facility, additional gateways, so we could see some type of immortal sentry timing. And if Vibe loses his queens, he won't be able to produce the units necessary to defend such a timing.
Spore Crawler is just now going down. The Phoenix is going to be delaying just a little bit to take down an Overlord. That's just to the left. And that's pretty smart because that means that Overlord is not going to be able to scout while these Phoenixes are across the field. The Phoenix is heading toward the natural expansion. Spore Crawler getting finished up here at the natural, but this Overlord going to die right away. A drone going down as well. Queen gonna huddle right next to that Spore Crawler, and now we're gonna watch as Vibe pulls those Overlords back. He has to be careful not to lose these stray drones, and of course Jim gonna keep an eye on that third base to see if any Queens are over there. But definitely gonna be trying to do as much harassment as possible while transitioning into, as you said, those Immortals. He has a robotics bay as well, so we're likely to see Colossi fairly soon.
Jim playing it very safe, going for the third base, and you know what, Whirlwind's a very big open map. Even though I have a lot of sentries, I don't want to risk going for a two-base timing because of how open the map is, and if Vibe gets enough units out, he can really fight in positions where it's very difficult to use force fields to my advantage.
Yeah, Jim playing this so safe throughout this game, not deciding to directly counterattack once he gets an advantage, just slowly extending his lead, taking a tech advantage here. Keeping his opponent at home, taking down an Overlord, a few drones, securing his third base, making sure his army is postured in such a position where it can protect that point, and it's not necessarily vulnerable. Vibe doesn't necessarily know about that third just yet, but once he sees that third, it's going to be a very scary situation because, sure, he's going to have Hydras on the field, but there's always that threat of Colossi from your opponent, and if you're trying to engage across the map with Hydras, you can't really retreat that easily. So Vibe has to make a decision. Does he try to be aggressive towards this third base, or does he play defensively, take a fourth, and try to, appropriately counter what his opponent ends up throwing at him?
Oh, 4 Hydras rallying out, but the Phoenix is not enough energy on them to go and engage and pick off those few Hydras. Vibe knows about the third base now, and like you mentioned, he has a choice. He's behind enough that if he tries to do a Roach Hydra push, as long as Jim's force fields are decent, Vibe is going to be slaughtered. And now he saw the Void Ray. He sees Immortal, so he has to assume Colossi could be on the way. To combat this, he's going to need tech. He could either try to do a surprise, muted transition, and hope Jim doesn't scout it, or he could go straight to the Vipers. Against an opponent going air units like Void Rays and Colossi, Vipers are a great unit to try to mitigate those very powerful Protoss tech-heavy units.
Of course, this does open up a timing for Jim here. His third base is going to get up. His econ is going to be fantastic. He's above Vibe and Harvesters right now, which is exactly where a Protoss player wants to be. So there's a timing window here. Vibe's going to start up that Hive, and then he's going to try to get those Vipers out on the field. But before those Vipers get out, before they get enough energy, oh wow, he's actually not doing that at all. He's going for Swarm Host. So Vibe, still going to be playing defensively. Do you like this decision to go for Swarm Host here?
Swarm Hosts are always, I always support Swarm Hosts from a Zerg player. Whirlwind is a very tough map to make Swarm Hosts work, though. I mean, it's a situation where it's very hard to ever push those Swarm Hosts out to the middle of the map because then there's so many ways that Protoss can run around them and counterattack you. But Swarm Hosts are also a great way to try to stall out the game and catch back up. Yes, you can't control a good chunk of the map, but if you know you're behind, you can usually avoid dying by just defending 3 to 4 bases very diligently with Swarm Host, Queens, and Sack defense. So it may be Vibe thinking, okay, if I try to go to Vipers, he may just kill me before I can get to them. So I need something to...
One Phoenix going down. Phoenixes are actually going to be really important going forward because obviously they're going to have the ability to not only take out isolated units, but also picking up those Swarm Hosts. That's going to be very important. Of course, you need an Observer to make sure to see that. So we'll have to look out for Vibe here too. Keeping an Overseer in his army, targeting down those Observers with those Hydras, and just trying to prevent Jim from seeing those Swarm Hosts. But this is all going to come down to positioning. If Vibe sends his Locusts in the wrong direction and Jim scouts that, he's going to engage, and he's going to try to do as much damage as possible. Also important to note here, Jim has scouted what his opponent is doing, and he's making 2 Void Rays at a time.
This is a lot of air units. Vibe does have enough Hydras. The problem is Hydras will die extremely fast to the ground forces of Jim. So Vibe has got to use his Locusts, like you said, to make sure they're always in front of the rest of his army. And he also ideally wants to get Vipers as fast as possible. And then you mentioned the Phoenixes. He has to protect his Vipers from the Phoenixes, take out all the Voiders and Colossi. There's so much Vibe has to do just from playing behind this whole game. But he's doing the right steps. He's getting all the stack defense at his 4th base to defend from potential counterattacks that way. So his Swarm Host Viper combination can really try to defend the frontal attack path.
Of course, you know, a lot of theories have been thrown out there. How do Protoss players deal with the Swarm host play? Some people might be remembering WCS Europe, Baby Knight versus Stefano. Baby Knight unable to find out an answer, unable to come up with an answer for the Swarm host. He was the last Protoss player in that tournament. Now Jim, he's going to try to figure it out. Now what he can do here is set up pylons across the map, get a War Prism, go for massive counterattacks, abuse the lack of mobility of the Swarm hosts. Also, he has a Mothership Core with his army. So if he can avoid the Locust Swarm, go potentially straight to the natural, straight to the main. We saw this in Scarlet versus Hero in the round of 16 of the Premier League. He can just recall out after committing all of his forces.
Vibe sending out a swarm of Locust forward and retreating behind it, knowing that there's not quite enough Locusts to distract the Protoss army for too long. Very intelligently, though, constantly sending those Locusts up to try to pick away at the Protoss army, do as much damage as he can, basically before it gets to his bases, where it can really do a lot of damage.
Dude, that is such a strong army. I mean, the Locusts, sure, they're being a little bit cost efficient, but there's so much DPS in this army here from Jim. There's so much strength, so much power, that the Locusts are dying pretty darn fast. And look at how fast Jim is going across the field. Vibe trying to set up a little concave here with the Hydras, waiting for that Locust wave to go out. Keep in mind, force fields are here. He can force field that ramp and keep the Locusts away. And he's not going to do that just yet. Going to take down that wave of Locusts, but I don't think Vibe has enough.
Oh, the Swarm host retreating to third base. Jim saying, I'm not going to chase after those and walk into another wave of Locusts. I'm going to clear the creep, make sure more Zealots get in front of my army, because I want to make sure that if any units are dying to the Locusts, they're the expendable Zealots.
A Time Warp being placed there on the only possible location the Locust can come from. Great heads-up move there from Jim, adding on more and more stuff. Some High Templars being added on into the mix. Of course, Archons can take a lot of damage, and now Jim going to be heading straight into Vibe's third base. Vibe has to figure out a way to deal with this. So far, he's just delaying. He's trying to delay, but guess what? Jim is all the way in his third base.
Vibe setting up for a flank. He's got 2 Vipers. If he can pick off some of the key units of Jim, that could be key for this defense.
There's a Time Warp trying to slow down Vibe's retreat. Vibe again, just doing delay tactics. Gonna send a Locust Swarm again up towards this natural expansion, but now Jim is inside his natural. Vibe is having so much trouble coming up with an answer. He does not want to engage this. He needs those Locusts there to help out, but there's a Time Warp there that's gonna slow those Locusts down. That natural expansion goes down, and keep in mind, oh no, he pulls the Mothership Core. I was gonna say he can just recall out, but not anymore. Jim is very committed. Could that have been the game-changing move? The Hydra's coming forward here from Vibe. The Vipers dying very fast indeed. The Locusts coming forward, trying to get the damage done, but I think Jim might just have too much.
With all the Hydras gone, there's nothing to answer these Void Rays. As soon as an Observer comes in, the Swarm hosts are just going to be melted to the power of the Void Ray.
Infestors popping out, throwing down one spell as they pop out of the egg, but then they die immediately. And there's the GG from Vibe. Wow, a game that started with, you know, Vibe going for that early 9 pull. And I was a little bit surprised at how well Jim handled that. Again, imagine if that first force field doesn't go down at his ramp, right?
Yes.
What happens?
I mean, the game's over.
Right.
The speedings get in. One choice that was interesting, I thought, is how Vibe didn't try to instantly go for that side core when he got into the main. That's something some Zerg players will do, is they'll realize, okay, if he's got this amount of a wall set up, I can't kill him, but if I can take down the side core, that slows his tech down enough that maybe I can try to drone up. Vibe played a little bit more conservatively with that rush, and then he just fell pretty far behind. He played the late game really well, but being economically behind a Protoss for a 20-minute game is not where Zerg wants to be.
Especially a player like Jim. Again, he's been at the top of the Korean ladder. He knows he's been in this situation plenty of times before. Playing very patient. You know, getting that 4th base, warping units across the map, waiting for those Archons, and then his army was just so powerful. He might have been considering, you know, recalling out for fun just to play it safe. But once Vibe just pulled that Mothership Core away, Jim's like, all right, I'll just kill you. and that's exactly what happened. But guys, this is a best of 3. Don't count Vibe out yet. He's currently down 0-1 to Jim. Game 2 coming up.